Hi everybody, my name's Andrew and today I'm driving my B9 Audi S4. I've lived with this car since July of last year now, and in that time, naturally, I've come up with some things I like and dislike about it. So that's what we're going to go over in today's video. I put together a list of 5 of each, and let's jump right in. Interestingly, almost all of them happen to do with either interior features or things that you notice while driving the car, except for this first one, which is keyless entry on all 4 doors. I realize this is not an uncommon feature on cars nowadays, but it's the first time I've had it, and something I've certainly gotten used to. It's very convenient. Hopping behind the wheel of the S4, there's 2 things that you may notice in this sort of initial vicinity that I really like. Firstly, the steering wheel has a button with an asterisk on it, and this is also not a unique feature. Other manufacturers have their own variations of this, but it is basically a customizable button. There's a list in the MMI of everything that you can set it to. I have it personally set to my drive modes, because oftentimes my drive mode buttons are blocked by whatever's in my cup holders, so this is just a nice quick access to it. Speaking of drive modes, actually, one thing that this car does that a lot of others don't, specifically all of my BMWs, is it remembers what drive mode you were in. So I just started the car and it's in dynamic mode because that's what it was in when I turned it off. You don't have to physically reselect it every single time. The only downside is it doesn't initially remember the exhaust valve setting, which is linked to the drive mode, but once you start driving, it corrects itself. On the other hand though, the virtual cockpit, or the digital gauge cluster, that's what Audi calls it, even though it's a great feature and something I really like having, it seems to have memory loss for some reason. For whatever reason, it doesn't remember what you last set it to. There's a whole bunch of different views and menus that you can scroll through in there, and I have to reset it every single time I get in the car. And I should note that I've driven both a Q5 and an A4 where it doesn't do that. But for the life of me, I can't find any setting that would change that, so I really don't know. Moving down to the center of the dashboard, you'll find these silver climate control switches. These are great. They look nice, they feel nice, they make a nice clicking noise, they're intuitive to use, but they're incredibly reflective. I don't know why. They're a satin finish, which shouldn't even be that really reflective, and I have pretty dark window tint on this car too, but for some reason there is nothing else in the interior of this car that reflects the sun as poorly as they do. Now we're going to go for a quick drive so I can talk about the last few items. And actually, before we set off, I'll give you one more, which is the fact that this car, even though it has an electronic parking brake and it doesn't have a dual clutch, it doesn't have brake hold, or auto hold as it's normally called. This is something that a lot of people probably wouldn't even notice, but on cars where I have it, I use it all the time. So it's moderately annoying that this one doesn't have it, even though it should be able to, in theory. Since I'm going through a school zone right now, that's a perfect opportunity to tell you about the speed limit aware or sort of predictive cruise control that this car has. Now, of course, it has the full suite of safety features that you would expect on a car these days, and one of them is adaptive or radar cruise control. It also has a camera up there to read the speed limit signs, and it will actually adjust your cruise control automatically if the speed limit changes. Now, this is a setting that you can turn off, but I like to have it on because there's sometimes where it's actually kind of nice. You may not be familiar with the road, or you may not be paying attention to what the speed limit is exactly, and the car just kind of knows for you. It's great if you're driving, on a road trip out of state somewhere, something like that. Where it's not great though is in a school zone, because it doesn't have any time recognition. So obviously the school zone speed limit is only in effect at certain times of the day and certain days of the week, but the car doesn't know that. So regardless, it will automatically adjust it because that's the last speed limit sign that it saw. It's also annoying, and I realize this is not necessarily a valid complaint, what I'm about to say, but it's also annoying if you're the kind of person that habitually speeds, because it also adjusts the speed of your cruise control when the speed limit goes up. And let's say this is this is not a theoretical, this has happened to me many times. Let's say I'm doing, I don't know, 70 in a 55, which is excessive, but not unlikely for a lot of people. Let's say I'm doing 70 in a 55, and the speed limit goes up to 65. It will actually set my cruise control back down to 65 if I have it set at 70. So, again, that one's not necessarily as valid as the school zone thing for the legality reason, but it is still annoying. And since we're on the subject of driver assistance tech, this car also has lane centering, or what Audi calls active lane assist or some BS like that. And if you watched my video where I coated this car with OBD11, that was one of the things I actually modified about it, was making the lane assist a little bit stronger. And I have to say, after doing that, this system is really good. It's better than, well, I can't say it's better than anything else necessarily, because the last thing I drove was a Mach-E with Blue Cruise, and that was a whole nother level of actually being hands-free. But it's better than some other cars I've driven, I'll just say that. It lets you go a fairly long time actually before it lets you before it yells at you to put your hand back on the wheel. And I know you're not technically supposed to put your hand off the wheel anyway, but you know, either way, it's a super nice thing to have on a long drive. Definitely cuts down on you know, little tiny adjustments either way. Unfortunately, I can't actually show you the last two things on my list, but I can tell you about them. One of them is the Bang & Olufsen sound system that this car is equipped with. This S4 is a Prestige, and it's basically fully loaded. It's got the S Sport package. It's got all the, you know, full Napa leather interior, carbon trim. It's this car brand new. It's almost 65 grand. We'll just put it that way. So it has the B&O stereo, and that B&O stereo is very, very good. I'm not an audiophile, nor am I equipped with the proper testing equipment, but to my sort of everyday driver ears, it is rather good. This is actually a testament to, or a perfect explanation rather, for why certain brands of sound systems can vary depending on what car they're in. Because, for instance, I used to work at a Ford dealer, and Ford also uses B&O stereos in some of their cars, but it's not exactly the same system, obviously. And what most people don't realize is that the auto manufacturer gives the sound system manufacturer a budget to create the sound system for this particular car. And clearly Audi spent way more money than Ford did, because the B&O in all the Ford products sucks. And this one's really good. So there's that. Also, there's holy shit, there's an R1S. I was gonna say there's a Rivian, but it's actually an R1S, which I don't think I've seen in person yet. That's pretty neat. And the final thing is almost impossible to show you because it happens so sporadically that it's really not easy to replicate. And that is the parking sensors in this car just sometimes randomly go off for no good reason. It's not even in a place where you would expect them to go off, like, you know, when you're in traffic or rolling up to a stoplight and you maybe get a little too close to the car in front of you. It doesn't normally pick that up, but sometimes when you're driving at lower speeds, it'll just randomly beep at you for no good reason. I don't know why. I don't know what causes it. There's probably some sort of wiring connection or just some sort of other electrical error, obviously, but it's not something I'm going to put any money or effort into diagnosing, but it is still kind of annoying when the car just randomly beeps at you. Now, truthfully, I could probably make this video 2.5 hours long with every single little thing that I've noticed over the last 7 or 8 months, but I'm not going to do that because every single car is going to have things like that. After you live with them, you'll notice things that either bug you or things that you really like about them. I'll cover a few more of them in the full review of this car that I have coming soon, but for right now, that's where I'm going to wrap this video up. So, with that said, if you enjoyed it or found it informative, give it a thumbs up, or consider subscribing for plenty more content to come.